Hi everyone. My name is Mariko. I am a bilingual Japanese English small business consultant working around LA County. And one of the business owners, families I get to work with are the amazing Hirose. One of those family members is Philip, who's with us today. Some of you guys may know of him from, that corner in Little Tokyo with all the benches outside and umbrellas, that cute little spot called Aze. But today, actually, we're here to talk about Anzen Hardware. I actually don't know what Philip does outside of Aze and all of the community program he does, but apparently he does have a full-time job and he does have other things to do besides running a bunch of his family's businesses. Philip, could you just give a quick introduction for maybe some people who are not familiar with your family's background and about Aze, and then we'll jump into talking about Anzen. We're just gonna really tease this out a little bit longer.
Yes. Hi everyone. Thank you for coming to this. My name is Philip. I like to introduce myself as the son of my parents, Akira and Joanne Hirose. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, we are a family that's in Little Tokyo who happen to have a business. And I prior to this, about a year ago, I was working in film production. And since the family restaurant Aze has been open, I was double dipping until a year ago. And so this is me jumping in with 2 feet in. And yeah.
Awesome. I kind of for those of you who may not have caught it, I just kind of fell in love with this quote, a family in Little Tokyo that happens to have a business, which I kind of feel like is a really good description of a lot of our legacy businesses where we know about the family and their dedication, or maybe even, the legacy businesses, we think of that place as almost like our living room or our kitchen or a meeting place for community. So I think that's a really great way to describe your family. Today, I'm going to share my screen. Philip and I were organized enough to put together a full deck and visuals. One thing we did, yeah, look at that. Wow, fancy. One thing that I thought was really amazing is when everyone was RSVPing for today's event, one thing everyone did was they listed out some of their favorite legacy businesses. And obviously, Anzen made this list, but also places like Fugetsudo and Suehiro and Otomi-san. And then for those of you who are from other cities, I see names I don't recognize, like Soko Hardware, Hamlet's Cheesecake. So it's nice to know that everyone, no matter where you are in the US, has a cherished legacy business around the corner from them. So today, the topic of our discussion is what is the future of Anzen Hardware? And I joke that this is a press conference for Anzen Hardware because everyone wants to know what's happening next and how to support. But it's also meant to just be a discussion around what's happening with our legacy businesses in general. So today, this is a community discussion about preservation, sustainability, the future of legacy businesses like Anzen Hardware. And I encourage you guys, because we have such a large group, maybe we can't go too much off mic, but I encourage you guys to generously use the chat section, drop in your questions, your thoughts, your feelings as we go through these slides, because we are looking for constant feedback loops about what's happening in our communities. And as someone who works with small businesses, and Philip, who's actually is a business owner, operating 2 businesses in the neighborhood of Little Tokyo, it's really important to kind of communicate with our neighbors about what's going on. So these were our questions we had at the beginning, and the answers were really wonderful, especially the how do you show up. And I think one of the answers that, really stuck out to me was someone wrote, I think of them first. And I thought that was a really nice sentiment to say that. I think of them first. And I feel like that could be around consumerism, but it could also just be like during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people, they thought of our legacy businesses first. When they were concerned about their elders and they were concerned about their neighbors, they were also concerned about their small businesses. And I think that's a great way to show up, is just by always thinking of our neighbors first. Um, so what is today about? So today is just intended to be a discussion about the challenges that new owners of legacy small businesses face, especially when they're trying to, be committed to the preservation and growth in their community and not just profits over people. And I think this would be a good space for, we have a couple slides to kind of talk about the history of Anzen. But first, Philip, do you want to just kind of explain where is Anzen? I kind of created this like useful little map here for those people who may not be familiar with the Little Tokyo area. So where Anzen is within the Little Tokyo community, but also within LA and within the J towns of America.
Anzen is, we could jokingly say it's the closest hardware store to City Hall. It's the southernmost hardware store in any of the Japan towns. It is on the western edge of Little Tokyo in Southern California, city of LA. I don't know. It's narrow. The front entrance is narrow, but the store in itself goes a little deep, as do many of the businesses on the historic First Street North block in which it sits in. That is its current location until next Tuesday, because that is when our lease is up. And I just see in the image that the future location, we're currently working on sharing a space with a flower shop that exists in that current space, down to the details. So it is very much something in progress, but at least for its current location, and if you're familiar with it, we have to be out of there by next Tuesday. Right, that the 31st, I think. Yeah.
So we have this next slide, and I actually personally was not aware that Anzen had been in so many locations. I thought it had been in two. I was mistaken. Philip, can you talk a little bit about kind of this history of Anzen Hardware within Little Tokyo and the different places that it's been, but also the different iterations that it has taken over time?
Yeah, so Anzen originally started as a hotel supply store. It was opened by my grandfather, and it was a hotel supply store in response to Japanese Americans leaving the camps and going back to their communities, and specifically for this one, it is Little Tokyo. Oh, can we jump to the next slide real quick? Yeah, thank you. And so in the first photo, you'll see that in large lettering, it says paints. So they sold stuff like paint, cleaning supplies, linens. I hear stories about how my grandmother would roll quarters because there would be washing machines that would accept coins, to wash whatever was being washed. And this is also during a time in which I feel like Japanese Americans primarily lived in SROs. So these are single room occupancy hotels. So if you're not familiar with it, they're dormitory style hotels, in which everyone has their own room and a sink, but the bathroom and the kitchen facilities are shared. In Little Tokyo, these hotels there were so many of them that there was an association of hotel owners, and they went as far south as the Flower Market, which is on 8th Street. We're currently on 1st Street. But yeah, I hear about people and their families even just recently sold or owned hotels. These type of hotels in in Little Tokyo or adjacent. Yeah, so from there, it evolved into a hardware store. I'm gonna just jump a little bit because uh, the main store was a hotel supply store. As the SRO started to dwindle down, as Japanese Americans started to move into the suburbs, the hotel business or the demand for them, at least for Japanese Americans, decreased. So, in order to survive, it evolved into a hardware store. Kind of at this or at the same time, there was another store on Zen Second Street, and as I hear about it from my uncle who was very involved with it, there was a space, and my like as he told me, there was a space in Little Tokyo, and my grandfather just could not pass up the opportunity because the lease was that good. So he, took on that contract, and it was a store that primarily sold cookware. And this was also during a time in which my mom and her siblings left the nest and were either in college or graduated college. So this in a way was her project, and my grandmother was very very involved with Anzen Second Street. Yeah, because prior to that, she was a stay-at-home mom and she raised 4 kids, and so that's how that came to be. And yeah, so I'm gonna jump back over to the third one. It is as of next. I'll say that as of next Tuesday, it is Anzen Hardware. And then jump into the fourth photo in that I don't know if it's going to be a hardware store in the future. There may be elements of hardware in the store, but I think in order for Anzen to survive, it will have to adapt again. 30 minutes ago, as we're moving, we have hundreds of pounds of like nails, screws, fasteners, all these things that people no longer purchase at like local hardware stores, but they would rather go to big box stores. So I think we would have to move on from a lot of that stuff, or else we wouldn't be able to survive. So in the fourth photo, that's currently the space in which we're working it out with the hardware, the flower shop. And that is quite literally right next to where I'm sitting, because I'm currently sitting in the restaurant that's right next to, that's just left to the umbrella.
Here we can also see a Toyo Miyazaki Studios photo in the bottom, and that can kind of give some people a sense of kind of the location of Anzen Hardware when you're kind of looking down First Street. Before we kind of move into the kind of talking about what's been happening with Anzen and next steps, I'm wondering, does anyone in the audience or anyone in the group have a memory of Anzen Hardware that they'd like to share? If you're too shy, you can drop it in the chat, but if you would, like to verbally convey it or share it with the group, you're more than welcome to raise your hand or unmute yourself. I feel like, Philip just shared his family's memories about Anzen. Anyone in the group want to share an Anzen Hardware memory or story with us? Mia, we would love to hear a story from you about Anzen Hardware. Are you able to unmute yourself? Go ahead.
I think I'm on mute. It's not a story. It's just what I'm really going to miss. We have our family celebrations at my house, especially Thanksgiving, Christmas, Oshogatsu. And so, everybody likes to cook and cut things and always complaining about dull knives. And then I found out that Anzen does this fantastic, water knife sharpening. And so now my knives are on par and get sharpened the same way that famous sushi chefs get their knives sharpened. And so it's I mean, they're just things like that that I'll really, really, really miss about Anzen. And yeah, I like to, when my dad was alive, we used to watch Dining with a Chef and other cooking shows on NHK. And so all of the, the cooking equipment that we'd see, and we think, oh, wow, you could get it at Anzen. And I'll really miss that.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I see the chat is now starting to blow up where everyone's talking about their favorite Anzen Hardware purchases. Talking about some people, and Aniko is talking about her keys getting copied there. Anne is talking about getting knives sharpened there. Allison is mentioning getting gardening supplies. Oh, Kat had got our very first knife there. It's really nice when people are able to share not just a memory of a gift or something they purchased, but they actually know the story behind the place that they purchased from as well. And I think that's the really nice thing about our legacy businesses is, and the difference from like an Amazon or a big box is we have a story that goes with every purchase. And you might even remember who you purchased it from and the conversation you had with that storekeeper, which I think is something that, our legacy businesses, do very well. I often tell people, for me, a complex business model is one that requires a lot of customer service, and does it well. And I think legacy businesses are very special in that sense. Oh my gosh, this is great. So many wonderful comments. So I think the next thing it would be great so people can understand, because we've lost a lot of legacy businesses in the last few years. Some of you may have seen that Shabu Shabu House, which was in Japanese Village Plaza for decades, just closed also, which unfortunately they closed so suddenly. We couldn't, a lot of us didn't even get to go for our last meal. Suehiro Cafe in Little Tokyo was fighting an eviction. And during the pandemic, amazing spots like Blue Whale or Little Tokyo Cosmetics were forced to close during the pandemic. Can you give us a little context, Philip, and talk a little bit about why Anzen Hardware is closing, and also why it's moving from its iconic location at First Street North over to a farther down space, First Street South side?
Yes. So we were very sensitive to the language that was communicated about what Anzen was experiencing, because we understood that Anzen was closing in its current location. People responded differently when we would say that Anzen's moving. And I think that its current space holds a lot of history, a lot of that memory, a lot of what makes it really special. And it was closing because the gentleman on the left side, Nori Takatani, who was the previous owner, he wanted to retire. He's like 85 years old. His health conditions were kind of a roller coaster, and it was closely tied to the sale of the business, actually. And so, yeah, we wanted to make sure that it was communicated that it was closing, and that it was Nori's retirement, and that it's a celebration for his commitment, his hard work, and for the love that he put into the store. So there's space for celebration, but also sadness in that, we wouldn't be able to see him as often, or that the store won't be in the space that many of us grew up knowing it to be at. So I think that there's a whole spectrum of emotions, and we wanted to capture that, to recognize it, but also to allow the community to process it. And it really was a struggle because Nori's identity was so much about the store. Yes, and on the side you would never know, but he was like a boxing manager. So as we were going through the store, there were a lot of like visa applications for boxers to box in Japan, which is really cool. And yeah, so the store essentially became his identity. And so I think for him to process what it will look like beyond that, it was very difficult for him. So at first he wasn't very receptive to doing interviews or to talking about it, but I think once you warmed him up a bit, then he would really start to share and at times even get emotional about it, because it is a very emotional process. Yeah, and I think that even though Anzen experienced this, I think that it's something that all legacy businesses experience when going through that transfer of ownership, because it's very personal. It's people's own individual history, but also family history. So we wanted to be sensitive and hold space for that.
I think that's like amazing that Philip and his family were really sensitive to that. For those of you who may not be aware, Koraku, it was like some of you mentioned is a favorite. They changed ownership earlier this year from Hiroshi-san's widow Mihoko Yamauchi to Mamoru Tokuda. Little Tokyo Florist, located in Little Tokyo Galleria, also changed ownership in 2 years ago in 2021 from Mary Onoe to Yuka and Molina. And also there's although ownership transitions currently happening. As Philip mentioned, there's a lot of challenges there to even encourage the owners to announce the ownership transition. Philip, why was it so important, not just as a community member, but as the next business owner, to really clearly communicate the ownership transition and also the closure of the First Street, the iconic First Street North location?
It was so that people could process it, because I think, yeah, it's a space in which it meant a lot to people, and that it's kind of like, I've been drawing analogies, and that it's kind of like a funeral, in that funerals, like, is it for the person who passed away? Is it for the family? Is it for the friends? And is it for the community? Is like, who's allowed to mourn for something like this? And but yeah, also like celebrate. And then we feel like it's I think and even for the future of Anzen, legally, there is a single owner, or there are people that are on this like legal document, whatnot, about who owns it. But in reality, everybody owns it because of their relationship to a space or to a business. That's something that's like intangible and priceless. That's like what keeps people coming back to support it, is really the intangibles. And the communication's hard, especially for a culture that's not great at communicating. And before the communicating, which I'm even guilty of, there has to be that process as well. And so there were times when I had to communicate like the celebration, even though Nori was kind of resistant to it, because that time was taken a little bit. But I knew that, deep down inside, it's something that he would appreciate. So yeah.
I can attest firsthand how resistant Nodi was to saying anything. And Philip was very persistent to encourage him to be celebrated and recognized, not just during this the closure announcement, but even for the 75th anniversary a few years ago, when it was 2020, it was 2021. It wasn't a super fun time, and the idea of celebrating didn't seem appropriate to some people, but also it was necessary to make sure that we do take the moment to have some fun, as Philip likes to say, and kind of enjoy ourselves, even when things are pretty tough. I also work with Suehiro, which some of you had a chance to kind of go to that community meeting at Nikkei, hosted by Nikkei Progressives. And we talked a lot in the last 3-4 years about when do we start telling people what's going on. And the ownership was really hesitant there too to share what was actually happening. One, because they didn't want to put their issues on other people. But at the end of the day, what convinced them to share was realizing that people wanted a last chance to visit Suehiro because it is their community space. And I'm glad that new owners like Philip, are taking that into consideration when they start to take over a space. Just to switch up the conversations a little more lighthearted, here is a list of what we think are some of the most iconic wares of Anzen Hardware, and you'll see kind of a photo of the wall from the First Street North space as well. Philip, we're wondering, the people must know, because you did hint earlier that there will be a different kind of Anzen coming forward. Are any of these items going to stay with us for the new Anzen? Can you give some kind of insight of some things we could see in the new location versus those that we may not see anymore? Like key cutting, I'm wondering about.
Yes. I would say that everything listed would be at the future space. I think the funny thing about keys is that if we don't have them, we can't get in anything. And it's something that's like $250, and we feel like it's so important, but once we don't have keys, then we're kind of screwed. But also keys that work. I think keys that work are equally as important. But yeah, I'm going to be clear in that everything is up in the air, and that it's a work in progress. But the things that are listed will definitely most likely be there. I think, as I mentioned before, that we also can't. There's still a lot of stuff at Anzen that we need to get out for a week. Those items won't make it over simply because of the lack of space. But we also know that we need to adapt to survive. We also want to make sure that things that are there are being sold. I think part of the charm for Anzen is that there were things that were moving, but also it wasn't moving. And by moving, I mean selling. And I think that the reality is that space, especially in downtown, is limited, and it's extremely valuable. So turnover is incredibly important. So we're going to reach out to probably put a survey out there, probably do one of these things in person. If I run into you in the middle of the street and you're like, I think this would be great, you should have this, we'll do our best to have it there, because ultimately if people need it, will come only if they're able to use the thing. So yeah. And it strictly won't be hardware, but yes, Japanese gardening tools, Seeds are kind of up in the air. We're kind of I was thinking it'd be cool if we sourced it from Kitazawa seed, or maybe rework the seed thing. But yeah, in terms of tangible retail items, I think those would be the things. Oh yes,
we're gonna
Bokashi's great. Sorry.
Nice thing about the new location is we have space like right in front of the front door to actually do like a Bokashi workshop if we wanted to, which would be great.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump back to this map one more time, just because now we've talked a little bit about Anzen, just kind of looking at when you cross the street and go further out of Little Tokyo towards City Hall. Can you talk about what went into the decision-making process of moving the location, from the current location to this new location? I know that you and I talked a little bit about just in general what's going on with small businesses, and you're moving it in to be shared with another business, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But I think a little like a preview of that would be great.
I mean, I think the reality is that it's land in a capitalist sense in Little Tokyo is getting expensive. This was seen before the regional connector was built, but a couple months ago, the second largest train station in LA was built and is now up and running. There's a lot of market rate housing that is built in Little Tokyo. And so because the property values are going up strictly for business interests, the property taxes are going up. And with that, rent's going up. And so the rent nearly doubled with that change of ownership. And we cannot afford to be there. I think it's really hard for small businesses to compete with the larger businesses. I think a lot of us are very sensitive and mindful about how price increases would impact the customers, with the fear that it will scare them away. But the costs across the board are going up. I know for retail, like fuel is going up, so that has been heavily impacting retail, and things like things being imported from into the port of LA is becoming a lot more expensive. So that is the reason why it's moving. It is moving into a building that is owned by my mom and her siblings, but even with that, it is there are challenges, because we have to foot the property taxes, even if we're against things like market rate housing or just so that is why we're moving.
Thank you for being so transparent and sharing some of these things that, make it really clear, why the move has to happen. And yet here you are still trying to figure out how to make it work. Wanted to give kind of a little break to Philip, and either in the chat or if someone wants to share, we would love to kind of know a little bit more about, your favorite community business. Some of you shared in the pre-survey, but more importantly, what kind of makes it your favorite community business? And if it closed, did you know why it closed? Does anyone have a story about a business that they feel really close with, that they want to tell us a little bit about and share what kind of makes it special to them? In the group, you can raise your hand, or you can drop it in the chat.
And
I
it could
also
be,
could call on people, I guess, since I recognize faces. But sorry, go ahead, Philip.
I was just mentioning it could be in the communities that you live in. It doesn't specifically have to be in Little Tokyo, or I think that, there are small businesses everywhere, and it's important to not overlook the communities we live in. Mariko, I was going to jokingly ask you what yours is, but I think that it would be safest to answer that. As a small business.
Yeah. I'm not supposed to have favorites. Oh, I see Yoshiko raised her hand. Yoshiko, would you like to share?
Yeah, I guess I would say Rafu Busan. I feel like I've been going there my whole life, and gosh, I think about the beautiful selection of gifts that they have, but also how they so carefully wrap your presents and hand make the bows, and they're just so thoughtful. Just feels like home.
That was going to be my follow-up question to you, is like, how do you feel when you go there? But you're like, it feels like home.
Yeah, it definitely feels like family.
Thank you for sharing, Yoshiko. Kathy, I see your hand is raised. Would you like to share about a business?
Actually, I was going to share about a couple of businesses in the past that really made Little Tokyo feel like home. Like there used to be a Fred's shoe store, shoe repair. And, a shoe repair is kind of an odd thing to have, but it was, and he was just such a colorful character. He would sing, he had a singing talent. He was on San Pedro Street. And then also, of course, the Amerasia bookstore, which was in JVP. But those are kind of places that I really felt at home with. And also the people that ran it were like, just part of making Little Tokyo the interesting place that it was. So I think that's part of it. And of course, Anzen Hardware. A lot of memories of Mr. Maihara and Nori. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kathy. I love when people say like, oh, they were such a character. I'm looking forward to the day when people describe Philip in that way, when he's like an old man and like, oh, that owner of Anzen is such a character.
He's a character now.
I wasn't going to go quite that far yet, but yes, he certainly is. I see in the chat, everyone's saying this is already how we describe Philip. The secret's out. I see that James has made a great list of businesses, not just in Little Tokyo, but in Gardena and Pasadena as well, and down in Crenshaw. I see Talk's Coffee Shop. I feel like I need to bookmark all of these. One thing I always tell people, and I love that you guys kept talking about the owners and their personalities and people being such a character, is when I travel outside of Little Tokyo, I'm actually speaking at a conference next week in DC about our small businesses. When I start talking about Suehiro or Anzen, sometimes people don't know I'm talking about a business. They think I'm talking about like an auntie, or they think I'm talking about kind of a cranky old man. And I think that kind of speaks to how strong the characters of our businesses are, but also how that character is infused, over generations through the ownership and the families and the community that frequent them. But does anyone else want to share about their favorite or cherished space in one of their neighborhoods? Thanks again to Yoshiko and Kathy for sharing.
When Kathy mentioned cobblers, I thought of that goods and services place.
Oh yeah, which is owned by there is a new shoe repair shop or a cobbler out in Arts District called Goods and Services. They also make custom sneakers because they've adapted the business model. But the co-owner, the wife, is a couple that owns it, is the niece of Brian Quito at Forget to Know. So they're right at the edges of Little Tokyo to the Arts District. So I think the big question on everyone's mind is what is the future of Anzen Hardware? And I had actually given this as a homework assignment to Philip, and he literally wrote in this answer. No, really, I don't even know. Do you want to elaborate on this, Philip? But maybe this also speaks to where small businesses are at in terms of, they're not static spaces, right? They're dynamic community spaces. And can you speak a little bit about your, no, really, I don't even know that, or you just like didn't feel like doing the homework assignment?
Yeah, I wanted to be, I wanted to be clear that I don't have an answer. I don't have a point A to point B answer because there's so many variables and there's so many things that are uncertain, that I actually don't know. I think it brings a lot of reassurance to a lot of us in that, to have answers of certainty of, in which things like impermanence don't exist. But yeah, I what I do know is that Anzen will be closing on Tuesday, and that we're planning to hopefully open by like January in the new space. But I think it also shows like how vulnerable these small businesses are to closure. There are just so many things that there are just so many things that they're trying to figure out how to stay afloat. They're trying to it's just they're just there's just so many elements to it that it's challenging. It's not a place in which there's like a lot of staff in which everyone has a specific role, but for places like Anzen and the small businesses that we love, they're just trying to figure it out and just get by, or just trying to stay ahead of the curve, because things like competition is puts them at risk.
So this kind of conversation came up a lot, especially during the pandemic, when businesses, not just legacy businesses, were kind of trying to figure out their future in the midst of all this uncertainty. And in a lot of cases, we were kind of re-looking at all of their books and all of their business models and kind of just trying to figure out like, okay, we got to pivot. The pivot was the popular word, right? In 2020, 2021 for businesses, we got to pivot. But really what it became was not a pivot, but it was an evolution of their business model. And sometimes though, the business model really doesn't make sense anymore. Like, it's like, do we still really need this business? Like, maybe it's just naturally we need to let it go. A hardware store selling bolts and nails in some ways feels like it fits in this category. So for Philip, for you, it's not like you're not busy already. Why was it so important to you personally, not on behalf of your family, but for you to secure even the possibility? And we're going to say possibility because we are very uncertain about the future of Anzen. Why was this so important to you? And then I have some other follow-up questions.
I think it's our attempt to save. I think in this instance, sometimes it's not the appropriate word to say that you're saving something, but I think in this sense we're trying to save a piece of our family history that is so close to us. I know for my mom, she holds it very dearly, as well as a lot of people in the community. So this is us trying, as we're trying to figure things out. And one of the first things that I saw in this photo, I remember that it was the pickup day in which we did a collaboration with Craft by Maki. in which it wouldn't have made possible with the help of just so many people like Mariko, Justin Kawaguchi. I'm also saying that this table was lent by my cousin Andrew because his name is clearly on it, and he also volunteered, as well as my cousin Chelsea, other cousin Chelsea. The survival of these places relies on the generosity of so many. And I think that that's why it's important, is that it at least gives us a chance to position it to grow. I think that there is a period of survival, but there's also a period of growth, and that they're interconnected. That is the process of it, but we want to at least give it that chance, and we can very much be stubborn in that we're not gonna go down without a fight. So yeah.
When you talk about that period of survival and period of growth, what makes you believe in Anzen? Like, why are you devoting all your free waking hours? Why are you, hand transporting boxes, down half a block? What is it about Anzen and legacy that really is motivating you to be so invested in trying, like you said, this is us trying. That's a great way to describe it.
I think it's because we see so many other places that are trying as well. It's not Anzen. The answer that I'm giving is not Anzen specific, but I know that like there are hardware stores still in the other Japan towns. There are hardware stores in my parents' neighborhood that are small businesses. There are other small businesses littered throughout, not littered, sprinkled throughout the communities that we live in. And that's the inspiration that I am at least operating off of, and even across the country, and just seeing all the cool things that people are doing, but we're also just trying to be mindful of the community that we exist in currently. But yeah, yeah.
I want you to talk about this photo. So this photo, can you tell us where this photo is taking place and what is happening? This is a wild photo. I just like snapped it. Like I was like, what is happening right now? Philip.
It's like we should be looking in the it's like in the basement there should be an elephant in there. In the photo, we're currently looking at the basement of California Floral, which is a space that Anzen Hardware used to be in. This is the current owner of California Floral, which is like a business that's been around since I think 1903. Granted, it's gone through different ownership. But this is us negotiating. This is us trying to figure out like how can we coexist in a space. There are some parallels between Anzen and a flower shop, such as the gardening, the growing, and this is us trying to live together in a studio apartment. I don't think there is a current space in Little Tokyo that is like this, in which two businesses exist in the same space. So I think that it's like an opportunity in which we can be an example of that, or try to figure out like how that could work. Because it's expensive to open a business, and to share a space would help lower the cost, at least in terms of the rent. But yeah, I feel like in this photo, we just have such blank spaces, but this is the process. This is the meaningful work. It allows a space like Anzen to exist in the future, but also the negotiating, the working together is not only in the basement of California Floral, it's up on the surface throughout Little Tokyo and throughout the communities that we live in. And even the negotiating, even in the relationships and the friendships that we're in. Yeah. And why now? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Why now, and why would you even, I guess the why now also goes into why would you even consider, you know, like you mentioned, like this model of sharing spaces with another business in the same space, although it does exist in some ways, it's not like a super popular for very good reasons. So for you, why now are you exploring this? Yeah, what is the reason?
Man, I totally forgot what Mariko, I totally forgot what I said as we were prepping this a couple of days ago in relation to what the why now. But I feel like what we talked about earlier was that we never, it's like one of those things where we never get to choose a time in which things happen. We just try to prepare ourselves for it and respond to them accordingly. So yeah, I think in tandem with the causes and conditions that allowed for this to happen, from when Anzen started through its evolution, as Little Tokyo has been evolving since, as the world has been evolving since. I feel like, yeah, I don't know why now, but all I know is that it's happening, and it's happening in real time, and we're trying our best and trying to figure it out.
I love that you are working with another legacy business. California Floor is also a legacy business. Johnny, the current owner, inherited from his mom. They've been around for almost 100 years, and they've gone through a lot of displacement as well. They've been moved around because of public domain and other various reasons. And so they're also facing a lot of uncertainty with their future. For you, what is some of the biggest pieces of uncertainty that you feel are facing Anzen, and maybe what could also be some of those call to actions that the community can help to support you as you're facing this uncertainty?
The greatest uncertainties would be things like how, I mean, you know, I know that the onsen will be received warmly through the community, but one of the biggest challenges of a small business is the sustainability of it. Initially, the response, is very warm. It's great. But there are times in which you could hear the clock tick. Not that like time is running out, but you can literally hear the second clock because it's quiet, and that would be one of the biggest challenges. Behind us, there is a market rate. There is a development in which has market rate housing with retail on the ground. They offered our family, specifically my grandfather when he was still around, to purchase the building, I think with the intention to demolish it so that they can be on the First Street side and have that visibility. Things like that. Like once that project is done, the property values are going to go up, so that we're still going to retain the building and the property, but the taxes sometimes could go so high. And I think right now I'm speaking on behalf of the family as a landlord. But it does impact us as a small business. There are things that are happening to Little Tokyo, like this mega couple $1 billion project that's happening a couple blocks away. It's going to impact us as Anzen. So in terms of action items or in terms of suggestions or in terms of things I would like to see is just people getting involved in the Little Tokyo community, but also the communities that you live in. And to also bring these things up to your family conversations. We're entering the holidays, and I would love for people to talk about these things, even not only like things like the happy memories, but also the challenges that the community is facing. Because if the conversation ends here, then you know uh, then that's kind of it. So I hope that people can talk about this with their friends or family, and yeah, think about like what we're fighting for, and think about those good memories, and how we would like to see it for the future generations.
Someone in the chat is saying, can we buy Anzen gift cards for the holidays, even if the store isn't open yet?
That's a great question.
So
Good idea.
I don't have an answer yet. I would have to set that up, but we do. I do hope and plan to have like an online store by the holidays, or maybe a pop-up of some sort. It's funny because the previous Anzen, we were almost literally writing IOUs on pieces of paper because they didn't have or gift cards, or like just tell people, you should just give cash and then be like, hey, go do this business. But I definitely I'm going to try my best to have things like gift cards or yeah.
I really briefly just want to show, like, me and Philip put this together because we thought maybe there are people in the audience that are curious about possibly purchasing or being a part of ownership transition or supporting that with their family members or a neighbor. This is not it's just step 1, step 2, step 3, but really it's a Venn diagram of steps that are all happening at the same time, and sometimes not happening at all because one thing is paused because something else is still waiting. But I encourage you guys. So I work as a bilingual small business counselor around LA County on behalf of Little Tokyo Service Center, and those are free of charge services. So if anyone is curious, feel free to reach out to me and get some more information about what goes into purchasing, not just an existing business, but a legacy business in particular, because it is really important, but it can be a very unique situation, especially when it's a family-owned business. The last thing, we put everything kind of upside down because that was kind of the feeling when we were putting together this slide about the what's next. Do you have any dates that you could share, even if they're tentative? You mentioned there might be an online store. When can we have an eye out for that? There could be a 2024 soft opening. Are there any dates that we can keep an eye on? And how do we stay in touch with you in terms of what's happening with Anzen?
Yeah, so the best way to keep in touch with us is to, if you have social media, follow us on there. I have a laundry list of things to do for Anzen. Like I need to build up an email database, like a separate one, and we're hoping to open. We hope to open the new shop by January of 2024. Things that need to be done before then is to fully move into the space. Well, first we need to move out of the previous space, then we need to move into the new space, and we also want to go through the process of engaging with people to talk about things they loved about the previous one and things that they would like to see. As you see on the right side, this is a drawing that was done by the same cousin who has skills that I definitely do not have. and that came so handy because, you know, as we're sharing the space, we had to decide how can we share the space and also physically show that there is synergy between the flower shop and Anzen Hardware, given the parameters of a flower shop having like giant refrigerator coolers for their flowers and having needs and wants, and us having needs and wants. But yeah, sorry, I wish I was a little more prepared on this what's next part. I wish I had like a link where you could just sign up for your emails, but yeah, no, I don't know. I just encourage people to get to know your local small businesses, support them, show up often enough so that they remember your order or your face, and to continue doing that. Because I know that in many ways, like for small businesses, like in many ways, lower prices and convenience can be really nice, but things like that we would not be able to offer. I think Anzen might be a place of inconvenience, but I think that there are a lot of intangibles that come with it that I think will exceed the reasons to why you will support us. So yeah.
I love that you oh go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I love that you said that Anzen may be a place of inconvenience. During the pandemic, we kept saying over and over, you know, please have patience with our small businesses, because they are trying their best under a lot of duress and very inconvenient circumstances. And I think that actually, I always joke that when people say, oh, it's a lifestyle brand, I always say, oh, it's a lifestyle small business. And they're like, oh, it sells things for your home. I was like, no, it requires that you change your lifestyle to be a good customer, because you're going to have to like be a little bit more patient. You're going to have to accept that you can't pre-order on an app, and that maybe the teller is having a kind of long conversation with the person in front of you, or that they're going to insist that you take something home for your parents and go look for it and take that extra 10 minutes, and you can't leave the store and you're almost like a captive for an extra 20, because that's just how our legacy businesses work.
Parking will not be right in front. I'm going to be clear about that. Also, to have little to no power to determine what the parking situation is. There's a nice parking spot across the street, $1 per hour for the first 2 hours, and then it could go up $3 for the third hour. Inconveniences like we won't be open all the time. I like being at home at appropriate hours. These are also things that also relate to the restaurant. So if you see some parallels, I think some values will bleed over. Yeah, we won't be open all the time. We want to try our best about being clear about those boundaries that we also set with our workplaces. And conveniences like, yeah, the prices may be a little higher, but you'll be able to get to see the items. Maybe that's convenient. We'll go out of our way to be convenient, but we'll try our best. We may run out of something. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask us? I mean, in particular, Philip, about Anzen Hardware, or about being a small business owner or legacy businesses in general. This could also be a question that you're welcome to ask being addressed to the entire group. Are there any questions? You can either drop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and unmute and ask them directly. I see one of the questions is from Yoshiko Yeto. Are there still incubators for young Nikkei small businesses in Little Tokyo? I wonder if you're referring to the 341 FSN project we had 5 years ago that I curated. So yes, that was a really fun project. I had the opportunity on behalf of Little Tokyo Service Center and LISC to do a incubator for Nikkei entrepreneurs or members of the Japanese diaspora. And through that project, we were able to support Shoshi Watanabe, who now co-owns a ceramic space up in Los Feliz called Zakabaka. Jeff Ozawa, owner of Tenzo, who now owns a restaurant in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Michelle Hanabusa, who is the co-founder of Uprisers, who has an online store, no brick and mortar, but is actually available and distributed nationally at PacSun, nationwide at 300 stores. And Craft by Maki, who is currently in that space, owned by Darren Maki. What was really interesting about that project, it was a year-long programming inside the 341 FSN space where different organizations looked at programming that supported discussions around self-determination and community control. And I was lucky enough to be able to take over that space for about 3 months as well and support 4 businesses, as well as we also did a documentation of a podcast of community stories in that space. All those businesses were just online at the very beginning of their journey, and now all of them have brick and mortars or real physical offices and are nationally recognized by different organizations. And that was an amazing project. As of right now, at least for LTSC and LISC, there is no plans for that kind of programming, but it's definitely something that I would love to see. And then maybe spaces like Anzen or California Floral could be a space for providing some of the incubation opportunities. One really amazing shop over on 2nd Street in Little Tokyo called Yoboseo is actually a curation by Cindy Choi, one of the co-owners, James and Cindy Choi. Cindy Choi actually looks for local AAPI, not just Nikkei, but AAPI entrepreneurs who are small batch, and they can have some space inside that shop, like the 626 ice cream that they sell there. So there are some, and they have a monthly pop-up through, I'm blanking on the name of the organization, but I will find it and drop in the chat in a second, that also do a monthly pop-up market in that space as well, where API entrepreneurs can do a pop-up in that space. They're not charged by either Yoboseo or the organizer. So those are some really great incubation opportunities too. But I would love to see more of our, also Bunkado, which is owned by Irene Simonian, who's the 3rd generation ownership of Bunkado. They've been actually curating a lot and reaching out to a lot of local entrepreneurs, both who are Japanese American, Nikkei, Sansei, Nisei, Yonsei, as well as 1st gen, Shin-Issei. If you go up to their 2nd floor, right now, Shoshi Watanabe, Natsuki, and I forgot her partner's name, as well as Kunihara Yoshida. They all have visibility on the 2nd floor space. And one of those shops, even they actually man their own section, retail section, as a pop-up within a storefront. So maybe that can be the feedback to Anzen to provide some of those opportunities, which I know they already do through the restaurant. Aze has a lot of opportunities to incubate, like Yaki Poppies, which is a young group of guys who are doing yakitori. They're also often supported by Aze to cook their food and serve it right in front of Aze, which would be really hard for them to do without the support of a restaurant, with a brick and mortar restaurant that has all the right licenses and permits. So yes, that version of it maybe will not come back, but I do want to let you know that a lot of our small businesses are looking at ways to support future entrepreneurs and incubate them in their own ways by giving them space, right? Which I think Philip kept mentioning. Any other questions? Well, Anzen be open this weekend? Oh, Philip.
Oh wait,
I
what?
asked, is Anzen open this weekend?
Honestly, if you want to come by and just help clear the space and refill your like tackle box and whatnot, you're more than welcome to. We're kind of in the state of we need to just clear the space. So if you need fluorescent light bulbs, we got them for you. Or yeah, we don't want to see it go to waste. And I think this is like it's probably one of the hardest parts of the move. And it's like not even just physical, but it's emotional as well. So yeah, please come by. You might have to come to the restaurant at Aze to flag me down because I will not be at Anzen. So yeah, I'll just like hand you the keys and be like, take whatever you need.
So you guys heard it first. There's a Tadaima exclusive that you can be a part of the moving sale at Anzen Hardware. Just go to Aze first to find Philip, and then you can be a part of that. Oh, sorry, Mitchell. I see that they unmuted. Do you have a question?
Yeah, this is Mitchell Matsumura, and I started a Facebook page called Sansei Legacy, okay? And it was started about 5 years ago. And what I did was, this is going to relate, okay? I started posting pictures of some of the old restaurants and hangouts that I used to go to in the 70s and 80s, like Holiday Bowl, Grace's Pastry, Kokusai Theater, because I came from Crenshaw. And within 6 months, I had 3,000 followers, okay? And I just want to let Philip know that I really admire you for taking on this challenge, of moving Anzen across the street and to keep it going. And, you guys brought up the fact that you have to be changing, reinventing yourself. Let me share 2 locations in Little Tokyo that you guys might have heard of. And one of them was Atomic Cafe. Now, Atomic Cafe, I believe, closed like 15 years ago, but it was a Japanese restaurant started by the Motoba family, and they served Japanese food. Now, the daughter, which went by Nancy, Atomic Nancy, they called her, featured punk rock music. She was a DJ. Now, they kept on serving Japanese food, but they started featuring punk rock, and it became the place to go for punk rockers to hang out and listen to punk rock music. Now, keep in mind that the Japanese Americans, the Sansei, continue to go. We hung out with the punkers, okay, punk rockers. But what you were saying, Philip, that you have to constantly evolve, is that the Atomic Cafe closed down, but maybe they could have evolved into something else after. Okay. Now, one more story, and I don't want to take your time, but I hope you'll find this interesting, Philip. There was a store called Asahi Shoes. Okay, and back then, a lot of Japanese Americans came in from Gardena, came in from Monterey Park, came in from San Fernando Valley, and we actually went to Little Tokyo to shop, and we bought our shoes at Asahi Shoes. Okay, now after a while, of course, we went to May Company. I'm dating myself, May Company or Broadway to buy our shoes. So what did Asahi Shoes do? They changed it to T-shirts, and they started selling T-shirts, and it was kind of cool because you got the latest T-shirt at Asahi Shoes. They did continue to sell the shoes, but they sold both, so it evolved. And I was thinking that you guys have probably heard of Japangelis, right? Japan Angelus, that sells T-shirts. Maybe Asahi Shoes, they closed down, unfortunately, but maybe they could have started creating their own T-shirts. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is really important that your business reinvents itself and that it changes. And last thing is, have you guys heard of Giant Robot? Okay, it's a store, kind of like an art, art supplies, but also art ceramics and things like that. But they're in Sawtell. And I want to let you know that the owner, he's been able to sustain because he brings in a art clientele and he's constantly changing product. So, you can survive. You can do well in the Japanese American community. So good luck, Philip.
Thank you for sharing, Mitchell. I think we're close to end of time. I see we have like lots of wonderful shares. I'm hoping I can export this chat. I want to like bookmark everything. Philip, is there anything that you'd like to share? Any kind of closing remarks or asks or anything to everyone that came out to this evening on a Tuesday night? And I know some of you have been at community forums for the last like 5 days. So, Philip?
Oh, yeah. Hey, I was going to ask Philip, what is the second store that you'll be sharing with? You mentioned that
what is the what?
There's going to be another store that Anzen is going to share.
Yeah, it's California Florist. That is the current. That is the other business in which we're working out on how to share the. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mitchell. It's always good to hear because I've seen photos of places like Asahi Shoes, and I'm familiar with Giant Robot. Never got to go to the Atomic. I think it may have closed before I was around, but it's always interesting and educational, or good for me to learn and listen to about things that have happened before, whether it worked or not. No closing remarks per se, but just to thank you for coming out on this Tuesday. I feel like this past weekend was kind of wild for Little Tokyo, so I don't know of any upcoming events to plug. I'm trying to think of Okaide conference is coming up in November. I know that. I don't know. There's just always things to do here and to talk about, to take these conversations home. You don't have to necessarily just support us through monetary payments, but there's so many ways to support us, as we would like to reciprocate the support by being here, and to learn about how we could provide whatever you would like and whatnot. So thank you for coming, and I don't know what else.
So I thank you so much for Philip for taking the time to share your family's history and also to talk about and being so transparent with us, and sharing kind of what's going on along the way with Anzen. I think that's wonderful that you're doing that and you're allowing all of us to amplify that story. I want to thank everyone who showed up tonight, because I know there were a lot of events. There's always stuff going on. And it's a lot of work to kind of try to keep up with what's happening in your community. So I really appreciate that you took your Tuesday evening to hang out with us and talk. Did you have a question, Philip? Is that why your hand is raised?
No, yeah. I just wanted to also thank Mariko for staying on top of things. Mariko supports a lot of small businesses in Little Tokyo, and a lot of it is very emotional. And so if you see her running down the street, say hi, whether in Little Tokyo or like throughout LA. She's supporting places, and it is, I hope it doesn't go unrecognized. So thank you.
Thank you very much to Taiwan. Thank you everyone for coming out this evening. Look forward to staying in touch, and we'll definitely be letting you know about what's happening next with Anzen Hardware. Have a great night, everyone.